Hi guys. I recognize a few faces. We've been having a lot of meetings and amping up for the start of the term, so I know some of you, others I don't know at all. Maybe some of you even work with me in my office. I will not single you out. That's not the purpose of being here today. My name is Amy Elber. It's like elder, only with a B in it. And my contact information's up here. I'd ask that you maybe write that down. I brought a few business cards, but probably not enough for all of you. So if you could just maybe jot down my contact information, that would be great. I'm located in CC 150. That is right across from the cafeteria. And I just saw a gentleman take a picture of my contact information with his smartphone. That's a great idea. That might save you some time if you want to do that. Feel free. Here's my extension and my email address. Some people do get confused by it. My first name is spelled a little bit different. It's A-I-M-E-E. My last name starts with an E. And yes, unfortunately, my email address is AIMEEE@clackamas.edu. So that can be kind of confusing for some people. Okay, so what do I do? Well, I work in the Disability Resource Center, as you know, and again, we're right across from the cafeteria. We work with lots of different people, different types of people. How many of you here either have a disability, know someone with a disability, or have ever seen another person in your life with a disability? Oh, look at that! People with disabilities are all around us. Interesting. I myself have a disability. Any guesses? I know most of you don't know me. If you do know me and you know what my disability is, you don't get to answer. But in the first 3 minutes that we've had together, any guesses on what my disability might be? And feel free, you won't offend me. I've heard it all. So, yes?
Dyslexia?
Pardon me?
Dyslexia, maybe?
Dyslexia? That's a good guess, but no. Nope. Any other guesses?
Anger management.
Who said that? Who said that? I'm coming after you. No? But I'm curious why you think that might be the case. Yes?
Hard of hearing?
What's that? That's right, you got it, and you got it too. And it was interesting because you mentioned dyslexia and I didn't hear you. I am hard of hearing. I wear hearing aids in both ears. You can't really see them from your vantage point, but if I pull them out, you can see they're pretty tiny. These particular aids are silver. My audiologist got it wrong. Hearing impairment is kind of an older person's disability for the most part because we lose our hearing later in life. And so my audiologist is very used to ordering hearing aids with a silver tone to match their person's hair. And we originally ordered mine in chocolate color, or brunette to match my hair. They came in as silver and she said, "Oh, that's okay, it matches your skin tone." Great. Yes, I'm very, 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 very pale. I recognize that. Thank you. So that's me. That's a little bit about me. And who I am is much more layered than my disability and the color of my skin and my gender and my position here at Clackamas. And these are the things that you know about me so far. But there's lots more to me. And I'm hopeful that you guys are learning that through your training, that the students that you meet come to you with lots of different interests, abilities, upbringings, classes, academic experiences and abilities. And that's really the message that I want to get to you today, is the students that I work with are really a part of a bigger experience here at Clackamas. All of our students make up this really intricate tapestry. And who we are contributes to that tapestry, and what we do and how we've learned from each other and grown. So let's talk a little bit about students with disabilities in particular. Oftentimes what we see is that people are really nervous about approaching a person with a disability. And I think part of the reason for that is because we don't know how to respond or react or what could be helpful or not, because their experience is not our experience. And that's true, and I see it all the time in my life. When a person first meets me, we get chatting, we get talking, we do introductions, and we start talking, whatever. And then sometimes they'll notice my hearing aids, and I can almost feel this shift. They sort of bristle because they're like, oh, I didn't know. And they're probably thinking to themselves, what does this mean? Can she hear me? She hasn't said anything about her hearing aids. I don't, is that a hearing aid? Is she part of the Secret Service? Has she got something in her ear? What is that? And all these questions come up. And my disability is one that's kind of on both sides of the continuum. In some aspects, it's really a hidden disability. Even the people that are close up right here in the front probably didn't notice my hearing aids. So in some ways it's hidden, but in a lot of other ways it's very visible. If you see my hearing aids, if you get to know me, you know that I have to sit in the front in order to hear. I might ask you to repeat yourself. I might joke with you when you repeat yourself multiple times, and I might play that game with you just because I have that crazy twisted sense of humor. So my experience is just one experience of many, and what you guys are going to be doing is you're going to be working with students that come to you probably with a lot of hidden disabilities. Here at Clackamas, about 64% of our students with disabilities have learning disabilities. That's a really high number, and it's the highest number of all disabilities that we serve. Yes, we serve people with mobility impairments where they may use a wheelchair. We serve people with mental health challenges, they take medication. We serve people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Maybe they have speech, traumatic brain injury, neurological functioning. And then we serve a lot of people with learning disabilities. And the thing about learning disabilities is it's this huge umbrella. It encompasses dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Asperger's and autism, ADD and ADHD, all of these things. So I want to tell you what I do now that I've kind of given you this overview and being mindful of the time. Surprise, I work with people with disabilities and I help them be successful in their college experience. And so I provide accommodations in the classroom. So for a person like me with a hearing loss, maybe an accommodation for me might be perhaps I use a note taker in class, or maybe I have the option to sit wherever I want in the class so I can sit close to the instructor. Or maybe I use a sign language interpreter because I am fluent in American Sign Language. Or maybe I have someone come in and do transcription so that I can read, just like closed caption on the TV. So all of our students with disabilities come to see me for these accommodations. When they come to see you, you probably don't know that they have a disability and you probably don't know what their accommodations are. So my goal for today is to really, a few things. One, let you know that I'm available. Please shoot me an email anytime you have a question about working with a student with a disability. I will say that email works better for me than phone, only because one, I don't love talking on the phone. I can do it, I can hear okay on the phone, but it takes a lot more work for me to listen. So I read better than I can hear. So emailing me is probably better, and also it's quicker. I see it more quickly than I get to my phone messages. So shoot me an email if you have any questions. But the other thing that I wanted to impress upon you, again, kind of what I said in the beginning, is that we're all individual, and disabilities impact us in different ways. I see some people, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hands because it's obvious. How many of you wear glasses? And I'm going to call you out if you don't raise your hand because I can see the glasses on your face. Okay, so that's a fair amount of people. I am guessing that if I were to compare two people with glasses in this room, so maybe Patricia and Carol, I'll pick on you guys. Do either of you have astigmatism?
Yes. No.
Oh my goodness. You both wear glasses, but you both don't have astigmatism? Seriously? Do either one of you wear bifocals?
Try.
Do you wear bifocal? So you have astigmatism, you do not. You wear bifocals, you do not. Do you have separate reading glasses?
Integrated.
Oh, right on. Okay. Do you have problems with driving at night?
No.
Well, how does this work? I thought that everybody who has glasses has the same problem. I wonder if your glasses are the same prescription. Probably not.
We could try.
Okay, so if we were to look at vision as disability, which it can be for some people, I wear glasses as well. I wear contacts most of the time, just because I've become more vain in my age. I just don't want to wear the glasses. It's easier to coordinate my outfits without them. So not everybody is going to have the same experience with their disability, and that's true for every single disability. So that's important to remember. Some other tips. Don't fall into stereotyping people. If you see someone and they say, oh, you know, my ADD is really rough today, I'm just not able to focus. Maybe you know some things about ADD. Maybe you have a family member with ADD. Maybe you have ADD. And maybe you might start to think, oh, well, everybody with ADD is going to have trouble paying attention, so I'm going to make sure that I talk to the student like this. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, and maybe that's not how ADD works for that person, and maybe that is really helpful, but maybe it's not. So it's okay to ask questions. The other thing that I want to remind you is you may start working with a student who you suspect has a disability, or who may need assistance, or who may be a good person to come see me. Please, if you hear nothing else today, do not ever say to a student, you seem like you might have a disability. Is that true? You might want to go talk to the Disability Resource Center. Don't say that. That could get you and the college and a lot of other people in some trouble. If a student discloses that they have a disability, it's perfectly okay to say, oh, hey, you mentioned XYZ. You mentioned that you have a disability. Have you checked in with the Disability Resource Center? They might have some resources for you. If a student seems like they might have a disability, it might be a good time to say, hey, I'm glad you're here in the tutoring center. It's really good that you're here. This is one resource on campus. You also know about the library. It's here. Let me show you some resources in the library. You also know about academic advising, right? Academic advising is another place that you might go to get some guidance in your learning. I don't know if you know about the Disability Resource Center, but they're located right across from the cafeteria. Not sure if you have a need for that, but that's there as well. And you know, you mentioned that you're feeling stressed out. Have you thought about going to the gym here on campus in Randall Hall and working out? So giving them kind of this list of resources that they can utilize and sandwiching in the Disability Resource Center and letting them to decide what they want to do is probably the best way to go about that. Does that make sense? I have some handouts for you guys. They're pretty detailed, and we could go over some very, very specific ways to work with different types of disability, but they're all in the handout. And just some tips for working with people, how to listen, how to just really be equitable and fair when you're working with people with disabilities. I also have a couple brochures. I also brought for you the student experience when they come into the Disability Resource Center, what to expect. So if you have a disability and you want to work with me, or if you have a friend who may utilize my services, then you'll know the process for coming in, requesting services, what the student's going to need, and how we go forward. Is there anything that maybe we wanted to touch on that I didn't? This is a very general overview. But my job really is to help students. Your job is to also help students and to help them be academically successful. So it's kind of a different ball of wax than what I'm used to presenting.
Maybe just see if we have questions. And I know one thing that comes up is sometimes that students will come in to one of the tutoring centers and say, I have an accommodation for X. Oh. I get extra time. I get a regular appointment set up, and you don't usually offer that. I get this. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that tutors should know about that situation?
That's a really good question. So a lot of the accommodations are more than just a specific tool in the classroom or adjustable furniture or an interpreter. Sometimes these accommodations are extended time to take an exam. So for a person who has challenges with attention, being able to concentrate and process information, a perfectly reasonable accommodation is to give them extra time to take their exam so they have more time to process. And so sometimes students come in and they think that that applies to every area of campus. And that's not, that it depends on the situation. But when someone says that to you, you know, I have extended time on an exam, that might be a trigger to be like, oh, okay, well you've got some sort of disability, and maybe you have challenges with processing. These are things that you can be thinking to yourself. Again, never ask a student what their disability is. Let them disclose to you. If they start talking about their disability and then they say, well, oh yeah, I have auditory processing disorder, so a lot of what you say isn't going to stick as well as something that you write in front of me, for example. Let them disclose that to you. Don't go searching for that information. But really the process is, again, it's so individualized. Every person has a different set of needs and a different set of accommodations to meet those needs. So they may tell you they have extended time, but that could mean anything. That could even mean they have a physical disability that prevents them from being able to concentrate because they have a broken back, and sitting for more than 30 minutes causes them a lot of pain. So we've done an extension on their exam so that they can get up and take a break. So, you know, all these assumptions can be made. But really the process is outlined in the handout of what students do to request accommodations through my office. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
Typically what I find when a student has a specific need regarding tutoring accommodations, that they will usually first go through Amy, who will let me know, or the student will come talk to me, or a tutor will refer them to me, saying this person indicated that they need additional tutoring time more than our limits, and then we'll make those arrangements. And then another thing you can always ask students, who gets nervous sometimes worrying that I might say the wrong thing? Anybody? I do. It never hurts to say, well, how do you usually work? What would it help? What could I do that would help you learn this material better? That has nothing to do with whether or not they have a disability. You could ask anybody that, and that gives them the opportunity to tell you how you can best help them. And they might say, you know, if you could just let me talk for a minute and write down the questions, and maybe we could go over those, because I can't really see the planning process very well. Or, you know, some requests that they have. It's easy to grant that you could give anybody, and you don't have to ask about disability or even know they have a disability.
I'd actually highly recommend that you do that with every single student. I mean, it's a good first question. What's going to help you learn best? And you can ask that question in regards to how you deliver the material, how you work with the student, the environment, where you're sitting, how loud or soft you speak. Some people don't do well if you're sitting in front of a window because there's light coming in. It's harder to read your lips because, you know, your face is darker against the bright light. How you set up, again, the noise level, what ways you share information, whether it's written or verbally. Sometimes too, I'll tell you, I've put my foot in my mouth so many times with people. I have said to a student who uses a wheelchair, I really want you to be able to advocate for yourself. The best thing you can do is stand up for yourself in the classroom and talk to your instructor. I just told a student in a wheelchair to stand up for themselves. Oh my goodness. People have often said, you know, what do I say when if I'm working with a person with a vision impairment who's legally blind? And what if I say, oh yeah, I understand, I see what you're saying. Oh, I see what you're saying. Is that awkward? Is that, you know, have I offended the person? I'd encourage you not to worry about those things. We all have our own experiences, and we can get offended, and it can happen. But I think what I found is that if I'm authentic and I let people know I'm doing the best that I can, I want to work with you, you are the expert in your experience and in your body and in your mind. And if you can tell me what works best for you, then I'll work with you to provide that in the best way that I can. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to offer help. Can I get the door for you? And if someone says no, fine, no problem. let it go. Always ask first. Always ask first. I've had people say, oh, Amy's in this group discussion, so we're going to have an interpreter there. Well, I didn't need an interpreter in this group discussion. One, American Sign Language is not my first language. And two, this is a small group, so I can hear just fine. So always ask first before you provide any sort of assistance that you think might be helpful. And then listen to the answer. Be attentive. Think about what they're asking you to provide and see if you can do that. I have some basic etiquette for working with different types of disabilities, tips and tricks, mostly just tips. I don't want to do any tricking really with my students. Tips and etiquette, lots of specifics in the handouts, but in the interest of time and getting to your questions, are there any questions? Now's the time to ask. There's no stupid questions. Any specific disabilities that you want clarification on how to work with a student, or things that have come up for you before, or Carol, if you have any scenarios that you've seen in your years in tutoring.
When do we know if the disability is too much for us to handle? Such as, in the writing center we had someone come in and they really couldn't concentrate. When do we know if it's too much for us as peers and we need to hand it off?
To a faculty tutor, right?
Yeah, correct. To a faculty tutor.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. There's a couple ways that you can gauge that, I think. One is the student. If they're becoming more and more frustrated, more and more agitated, things are not working. I think this would be true for any student, regardless of a disability or not. If you find that what you're doing is just not working with the student, they're having a bad day, for whatever reason, it's not working out, yes, that would be the time to go get a faculty tutor. The other way that you can gauge that is your own internal sort of, what's going on here? What's going on in this experience? The two of us are working together. I think if you, again, look at the handouts, think about ways that you can work with students, maybe do some role play before you get ready to do some tutoring if you haven't already. But if you've kind of exhausted all of your options in helping someone and they're still frustrated or not able to grasp the information, a couple things that you could do. One, ask for help. Maybe ask for a faculty person to sit in with you, and the three of you can work together and they can give you some tips. Or just go and let the student know, I think I'm going to get someone that might be able to help us. But those are the two ways. Gauge yourself and gauge the student and see what's going on. And the thing to remember again is that we're all just people. It could be that particular day the student is just having a bad day and it has nothing to do with their disability. If you've seen them multiple times and you don't feel like you're progressing, it could be that there's not enough time, that the student doesn't have enough time to get the information, or yes, maybe they need to be paired with someone who is a better match. Do you have anything to add to that answer, Carol?
No, I think that's good. So you know who your faculty or staff coordinator for your area is, and that's always your go-to person. There are also some faculty tutors. You can refer to them. And of course, you can always, if you had a session and it didn't seem to go very well, you had questions, then that's something that you could either ask Amy about in an email or you could talk to one of us about. Patricia and Rhonda and I will all be in the Learning Center a lot. So if you can't find anyone in your own area, you can always come and find one of us and we'll try to help you the best that we can. Try to help the student.
There's another question back here.
Does the student have to have some verification from an agency or something about their disability in order for you to?
So that's a good question, and that I hear that question being kind of twofold. One, does the student need to have documentation of their disability? And two, do they need to have documentation of their disability before you refer them to my office, or before they can receive services? Is that right?
Well, I went to the center last year and I had to have documentation.
Yep.
And so I wanted to know if you have to have documentation from Social Security, you know, where would you,
Yeah.
where did you get it from?
So every student who receives services from the Disability Resource Center does need to have documentation of a disability. You can get it from a lot of different areas. It depends on your disability. If you're hard of hearing, you can get an audiogram for your audiologist. If you're working with mental health stuff, you can get a letter from your psychiatrist or psychologist. If you have a mobility or a bad back, you can get a letter from your orthopedic surgeon. If you work with an agency like Social Security or vocational rehabilitation, they often have documentation as well. If you receive services in high school and you have an IEP, sometimes providing a copy of the IEP would suffice as documentation. So yeah, we do need to show that a student has a disability. In some instances, there are some disabilities where I don't require documentation. An example of that is someone who is completely deaf and uses American Sign Language as their first language. I'm not going to make them go and get their hearing tested. You know, if someone comes in who uses a wheelchair and maybe they're missing a limb, I'm not going to say, can a doctor please tell me I need a letter from your doctor stating the obvious. But in most cases, I will need documentation. That's a good question.
And sometimes, like if it's been years since a student has been in high school,
Mm-hmm.
an IEP might be too old.
Exactly.
But there are resources to go and get testing. We have someone who
I have
helps
a-
with that, right?
We do not have.
First.
I have a list of people who do learning disabilities assessments. So if someone says, I think I have a learning disability, but I've never been tested, they can check in with my office and we have a list of people who do that kind of testing that we can give to students. A pretty long list that they can choose who they might talk to. Any other questions? We're running over time now. Well, thank you for your presence and your time and participation. Thank you.